Okay, in this video, we're going to go step by step in using extruded aluminum and ProMaster mounting brackets to build a roof rack and mount our solar panels to the roof. Using the ProMaster specific roof rack mounting brackets, these are super handy and allow you to not have to drill any holes in your roof. The set I purchased came with 10 brackets in a box. The brackets come as 3 main pieces, 2 bolts, and then all the hardware to attach them. You will also want to have a 10mm wrench, preferably a ratchet wrench, to avoid yourself the stress of having to tighten it incrementally. Ratchet wrench will allow you to do it much faster. It comes with little feet that go on the bottom to avoid damage to your roof, and you just slip them over the nubs that are on the roof of your ProMaster and then put it back together and tighten them down, which we will get into here in just a little bit. Here you can see the bottom plate and the 2 bolts, and then you have the fastening plate for the bracket itself, and then you have the mounting bracket for whatever you're attaching, and in our case the 80/20 extruded aluminum, which will then go and mount our solar panels to. Okay, moving on to our 40/40 extruded aluminum, which we have right here. We have 2 long pieces that were, I think, 67 inches each. One was cut down a few inches to fit the roof. We have our L bracket, which will be used to attach the crossbars and the solar panels. We have our 2 connecting bars, which we'll use to connect our 2 pieces of 40/40 together, as well as 4 inset screws per side that are used to tighten and secure those bars so that they won't come loose. Next, we have our T-nuts and our M8 bolts, which will be used to hold together the L brackets to our pieces and on the solar panel brackets as well. The T-nut just slides in with the bolt, and then it makes it very easy to adjust all of your brackets. One thing to keep in mind is that extruded aluminum is not flexible, so it's very important to have straight measurements. It comes with a Allen wrench, which you can use, but I highly recommend getting a Allen head bit and a impact driver and or a electric drill, but you will definitely want an impact driver for installing and removing these. Once you put those bolts together with those nuts, they're very difficult to get loose without an impact driver. So here we go, just tighten up the inset screws. The connection bar goes in, tighten it down, get it snug, and that's it. I needed to cut about 3 inches off of my end piece. After I did that, I just took a wire brush and cleaned off the little pieces and mess from the end of my extension, and wire brush works great for that. And then you just take, there we go, you have 2 pieces, 2 connection bars. You're going to slip them in, tighten them down, and then take your other piece and slide it right in there. Makes a really nice tight fit, and it won't bend or move. Once you slide it in, you flip it over and just tighten down the screws. Once we have our 40/40 links cut and put together, we're going to want to attach the mounting bracket itself onto the 40/40 first before putting it up on the roof. It's really hard to get the bolt into the bracket into the 40/40 upside down when it's on the roof. So slide in all of your T-nuts that you're going to need for however many attaching brackets you have. In my case, it is 3 up front and 2 in the back. So you want to slide them all in and then get your brackets started. So it just goes in. It's pretty easy to do. With these larger T-nuts, you can't put these in afterwards. They have smaller ones that can be installed later, which work also, but in this case I had the larger ones. So I started those, and then I went ahead and attached all of the little bracket itself. That bracket will attach onto the ProMaster mounting bracket up on the roof later on. So I just put that on there, get your bolts started. Don't get them tight, just get them snugged up a little bit so that you can still adjust it, but not so loose that they'll slide off on you when you're trying to put it up. Okay, now we've got it up on the roof with our pieces and our brackets. We have our mounting bracket assemblies, and we have our attaching bracket mounted onto the 4040 aluminum already. So we're going to just get them kind of lined up a little bit, and you want to take these little rubber boots that come with the bracket and install them onto the base. That protects your roof and the sealant that's on there. So they just slide over. Wiggle them on there until you get them on straight. Relatively simple. Just keep working at it until it gets on. This one takes a little bit longer than it probably should, but it eventually goes on. So we get those on eventually, today, soon, almost. Voila. Alright, so now that we have our little rubber boots on there, ProMaster has these nice little tabs that come on the van that the bracket just slides onto. Mercedes has something similar. So the little tab sticks up right here, and the bottom part of the bracket just slides over, just like that. And then the securing bracket goes on there. Should be simple, but it takes me a little bit longer than it probably should have. Yeah, get in there. There we go. Okay. There we go. So we have our bottom and middle brackets on the van, and then we have our mounting bracket on the aluminum. So we're gonna just turn it over here, get our pieces lined up, get them. You can just start at the front, leave the other ones off. You'll have enough wiggle room to secure the other ones as well. So line up your bolts, get them in there. So here we go. We will mount our roof rail on to the roof with the brackets, get them lined up. Get your brackets in there. This is where you're glad your T-nuts have already been installed. Just line them up, start your bolts. You can snug these down a little bit. They don't really need to be too adjustable. And here we go with our long railing fully installed. Now we're ready to measure out and cut and mount our crossbars. In this case, they're 57 inches, so that the overall width of the roof rack is 60 inches. Pretty much exact, because that's the width of the two solar panels bolted together. So I mark it off at 57 so that I know where to cut. And I'm going to take my speed square and just mark at least two sides so that I have a good visual line for when I go to cutting. I'm cutting the aluminum with my chop saw and a metal blade. It's a little slow, but it does work, and it's aluminum, so it's soft. It goes pretty well. Okay, here I have two crossbars cut at 57 inches. You can see I already have my L brackets mounted for the brackets of the solar and for the mounting to the long bars of my roof rack. They are cut to exactly 57 inches, and that'll give me 60 inches in total. As long as you've cut everything square, when you mount these up to each other, they should make a pretty perfect 90-degree angle. I still want to make sure, so I want to put this up here and just get everything lined up. And then I'm going to make sure I have 2 L brackets per panel. There'll be 2 panels there, so that's 4 L brackets, and then my L brackets for the side mounting. I want to go ahead and take my pieces here, my L bracket that I'm going to be using, and we're going to be using the T-nut and a M8 bolt. You can also use a little bit of Loctite. I don't know if you actually need that or not. These bolts with extruded aluminum, when you install them, technically you shouldn't really need anything else. But if you're going to use Loctite, use the blue Loctite. It's more adjustable longer, more workable longer. Again, with these L brackets, you want to snug them down, but you don't want to tighten them down. You'll need an impact gun really to loosen them back up. They go in really tight, and they don't want to come back out. So here we have our crossbar ready with our brackets mounted. I later realized I should have left the L brackets off for the solar panel mounting until later, because I don't really need them there because I'll mount them to the panels themselves. Okay, now that we have our crossbars sized up, we'll put them up on the roof. You can see we have our T-nuts there already in place so that we can just slide them over to the holes. So that way we can then take our inmate bolts and get them started to hold the crossbar in place. I had that at a rough measurement for my solar panel length. I will then go back and adjust them to be the exact width. Next, we'll go to the other side of the roof rack. You're going to want to angle your two T-nuts up or down and then slide them into place. Just a little bit of finagling will do it. Once you get it in there, just finger tighten them because you're going to probably need to adjust the width and the location of the bar. Same thing on the other side. I already had my L brackets in there. It's a real fight using the standard T-nuts trying to mount these brackets from the side. The T-nut wants to slide back. So I went ahead and got spring-loaded T-nuts, which are well worth the investment. Just pick you up a couple packs of those. Huge difference, much easier to install. Now we have the first crossbar installed. You don't need to have the L brackets on there yet, but you do want to have your T-nuts in there if you're using the kind that won't just slide in after everything's installed. So we're going to move on to the second bracket, or the second crossbar, which is more detailed. So we have our second crossbar placed and laid in there. We know that it's 57 inches. We've measured it and squared it. So now we're going to measure the length of our solar panel so that we can start to get that crossbar in the right place. To get the width correct, I also created a jig using a longer piece of the 40/40 and two L brackets that you can see right there that would go to the outside of both sides of that roof rack so that I know my width is the exact same as my solar panels, and that gives me a really good starting point for how wide I need to make these the long bars, so that then I can tighten them up and be pretty close to being in the right spot. But it's really important because you don't want to have to undo those T-nuts a lot of times, because without an impact drill, it's really difficult. Now we're ready to start measuring and making the holes to mount our solar panels. We'll be mounting ours from the side, so there are no pre-drilled holes. I did call Renogy and confirm that it was safe to drill holes in the side. So I have measured the overall width of that solar panel plus the width of the solar panel itself, and then deducted that and got the safe halfway location that I can put my drill holes in without damaging anything. So I just take my T-square, find that line, drag it across like I did with the pencil. So I have my center point there, and then I use my T-bracket to mark my width. So I went from the center here and 6 inches over from the center. I put a cross mark, and that's where I'm going to drill. And then I did the same thing for the ends. There we have our pilot holes. I'd highly recommend doing pilot holes. And then I think it was a 17/64 bit, I think. When you're drilling, obviously be very careful you don't get any angle to your bit. You don't want to hit the backside of your solar panel. Anytime you're drilling out metal, go slow. You want to use a slow drill speed for that. There's no point using it fast. This has two layers, so there's an outer layer of aluminum and then an inner thinner layer. So once you pop through the first one, you'll also drill through a second thinner layer. Back to the rooftop, we're going to get our widths correct. So I have my jig there. You can see it's set up to give me a template to know exactly how far out or how spread out my long bar side bars need to be. So I'll slide that down and then adjust it and tighten up the L bracket bolts to get the width correct. So here I have exactly the exact width, I hope and think, of my solar panel, so that when I place it on top, everything will line up on the sides, which will allow me to bolt the solar panels to the sides on the side, and then using the L brackets across the crossbars. That jig is really important, a really nice little tool I made very easily, and it saved me a lot of stress and headache. So here on the table, I'm making sure that my crossbars are the actual right width. I had a little bit of a problem getting it all to line up and work right, so I took it all back apart and remeasured it. So now that I have the width correct, I'm going to measure and get the length correct so that the front and back of the solar panels will line up correctly with the slots and the L brackets. The L brackets will actually be attached to the solar panel and then attached to the crossbar. Not crossbar first, the solar panel, there's no way to connect them. So this is when your impact is really important. That'll allow you to get the bolts in and, more importantly, back out. A drill would just tend to strip out that head, but the impact will really make it so that you can remove them and reinstall them easily. So I cannot emphasize that enough. I learned that the hard way. So here I have the width correct where I've marked it on the sidebars, and I'm going to measure my other side, make sure I'm as square as I can be at this point, and line it all up and try to get it installed. Okay, I'm back with the jig that I made. I have everything lined up in the correct length, and I'm checking my widths. Really important. This took a long time. I really can't emphasize this enough. This took a lot of work and a lot of time, but you can see it fit really snug and perfect, which is exactly what I wanted. You can see my T-nuts are there ready, and that L bracket needs to come off. I wound up making a template for the solar panels that was the exact width and length so that I could then move that up to the roof and double check to make sure that it was square. Nothing on your van up top makes it easy to ensure squareness on your corners. And when you're dealing with perfectly square solar panels bolted together and you need them to be the exact size on that roof, it's really important. Here you can see the template. I have the exact width there and the exact length. Both sides are nice and even. So now I know that when I put my solar panels up there, everything will line up nicely. It didn't take me very long to make and saved me a lot of headache. I tried without it for a while and finally decided that I needed to make a template. So I highly recommend doing that. And then once you get that all set, take your impact gun, impact drill, and snug everything down so that it doesn't move. And you are ready and set to install your solar panel up on the roof. Now there's many ways to mount your solar panels. I wound up needing to mount them from the sides and not from the bottom because of how my roof rack is set up. So to do that, again, I made a jig or a template as to where I wanted the mounting holes to be. So I just centered a spare piece of 40/40 I had, and then marked it off and put two L brackets spaced out evenly to the sides, and then that let me mark with a pencil where to make my first two holes, and then I did the same thing to create the next two holes as well. Again, I used my speed square to mark my lines on my template, my little jig there, and then I'll move that over to the top of the solar panel. I'll show you how I found the center of that solar panel. I just used the solar panel controller right there to find the center of the panel itself. Speed squared it on, traced a little line up it, and then transfer that line to the front of the solar panel. Now that I have my center line, put my template up, which I also have a center line on, line up my lines, and then just take the pencil and mark my center points there, and just draw a circle. Now you know exactly where you want to put your pilot holes to then drill out your larger holes. These holes were drilled out for M6 bolts because they're a little bit smaller, fit that better, and have plenty of strength as long as you're using a high-rated creative bolt. This bit does not work very well for this at all, for my solar panels. It cuts the outside the first layer just fine, but there's that inner layer of aluminum and it does not do it very well. So I wound up giving that up and just going back to using the drill bit. I did want to try that bit, but for this purpose, I didn't find it to work very well at all. Okay, we have our holes drilled and we have the M6 bolts with a little bit of thread lock on them, and put through the L bracket, the bolt through the panel. And then I found the easiest way to do this was to install the nut into a deep well socket and then put my lock washer in, and then put the flat washer on the top of the socket and then feed that up behind that panel. So that way my nut and washers weren't falling down all the time. I got a little bit frustrating, so this was my little tip to make that easier. I'm sure there's easier ways if you have more workspace or a better workspace. So you probably don't have to worry about this, but in my situation, this was the way to get this done with minimal frustration. Next, we're going to tighten up our L brackets. Make sure that they are all equally spaced top to bottom, so that when you put them up on the roof rack, they line up with the side rail flat. And here we go. We're going to mount our side brackets. Again, I used M6s for the mounting to the panel and M8s for mounting to the roof rack itself. Next comes a moment of truth where we slide our panel up. I did it by myself, and we make sure that it actually fits in the square, and I was shocked that it was perfect. The side bracket slid right over the outside of the side rails, and the crossbar brackets lined up perfectly. So here you can see it's all lined up. It's all nice and tight, bolted down, and there we go. We are installed solar panels. That's the first two, with two more to go right behind them.